Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahushai, Bahasham, Recha Kodesh. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. And today we're going to go into the book of Deuteronomy, the 26th chapter. And it shall be when thou art come into the land, or in unto the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee for an inheritance, and possessest it, and dwellest therein, that thou shalt take of the first of all the fruits of the earth, which thou shalt bring of thy land. That is your first fruits, right? Your first crops that grow. That the Lord Yahweh thy God giveth thee, and shall put it in a basket, and shall go unto the place which the Lord thy God shall choose to place his name there. And thou shalt go unto the priest that shall be in those days, and say unto him, I profess this day unto the Lord thy God, that I am come unto the country which the Lord sware unto our fathers for to give us. And the priest shall take the basket out of thine hand, and set it down before the altar of the Lord Yahweh thy God. And that is the basket with your crops in it. And thou shalt speak and say before the Lord thy God, a Syrian ready to perish was my father. And I think in the previous lesson I referenced this, and I mentioned Abraham, but in actuality, this verse is referring to Jacob. Okay, which when it says a Syrian, yes, the word there is Aram, like an Aramean, but the reason it says that is because those that were dwelling in Syria, being Abraham's relatives, right, his kin, that is the stock Abraham came from. That is also the stock Sarah came from. It is also the stock Isaac came from, since he came from Abraham and Sarah. And that is also where Rebecca, right, the wife of Isaac, came from. Hence, their son Jacob was considered Syrian, not being an Aramean by nationality, but of the stock of Abraham's relatives that dwelt in Syria. So that's what it means by a Syrian ready to perish was my father, referring to Jacob. And he went down into Egypt and sojourned there with a few, and became there a nation great, mighty, and populous. And that's the story of, in Genesis, when Jacob and the rest of his house came into Egypt, and eventually we became a nation over there. And the Egyptians evil entreated us and afflicted us and laid upon us hard bondage, right? So eventually, after the Pharaoh that knew Joseph died, the Egyptians started to afflict us, right? And put hard bondage upon us, intensified, putting us, basically making us slaves. And when we cried unto the Lord Yahweh of God of our fathers, the Lord heard our voice and looked on our affliction and our labor and our oppression. And so he basically was moved to deliver us. And the Lord brought us forth out of Egypt with a mighty hand and with an outstretched arm and with great terribleness, which is basically like a power or deliverance so great that it and instilled fear. That is a great terribleness, and with signs and with wonders. And he had brought us, and he hath brought us on to this place, and hath given us this land, even a land that floweth with milk and honey, which is a fruitful land. And now, behold, I have brought the first fruits of the land, which thou, O Yahweh, hast given me, and thou shalt set it before the Lord thy God, and worship before the Lord thy God. And thou shalt rejoice in every good thing which the Lord thy God hath given unto thee, and unto thine house, thou and the Levite and the stranger that is among you. So basically, when you go into the land and you're getting the crops, rejoice, bring a part of it to the Lord and thank him, and don't exclude in your jubilation and your celebration and your feasting the Levite and the stranger and the in other verses it goes into like the widow and so on that are in your city, that are among you. When thou hast made an end of tithing all the tithes of thine increase the third year, which is the year of tithing, and has given it unto the Levite. Remember, it said that every 3 years, right, you're supposed to bring a portion of your tithes to the gates for the Levite. As it says here, it has been given unto the Levite, the stranger, the fatherless, and the widow, that they may eat within thy gates and be filled. Then thou shalt say before the Lord thy God, I have brought away the hallowed things out of mine house. That is the tithe, the tenth part, and also have given them unto the Levite and unto the stranger, to the fatherless and to the widow, according to all thy commandments which thou hast commanded me. I have not transgressed thy commandments, neither have I forgotten them. I have not eaten thereof in my mourning. Remember, this is the holy thing, right? Because it's that tenth part which is, let's say, attributed to the Lord. So because it's holy, you're not supposed to defile it. That's why it says, I have not eaten thereof in my mourning, because in a state of mourning, you would be defiled if you're around the body of whoever you're mourning. So usually you'd be in a defiled state. So here it's saying here, I haven't defiled the holy portion, right, by eating of it in my mourning. Neither have I taken away aught thereof for any unclean use, nor given aught thereof for the dead. See? But I have hearkened to the voice of the Lord my God, and have done according to all that thou hast commanded me. So let's read this in the NLT. It says, I have not eaten any of it while in mourning. I have not handled it while I was ceremonially uncleaned, and I have not offered any of it to the dead. I obeyed the Lord my God, and have done everything you commanded me. Look down from thy holy habitation from heaven, and bless thy people Israel, and the land which thou hast given us, as thou swearest unto our fathers, a land that floweth with milk and honey. So this is Moses telling Israel, when you get into the land, this is what you do, right? When you get your first your tithe of your crops, right? Of your offering. Salakia, of your offering that you will bring to the Lord. Verse 16, this day the Lord thy God hath commanded thee to do these statutes and judgments. Thou shalt therefore keep and do them with all thine heart and with all thy soul. Thou hast avouched the Lord this day to be thy God, and to walk in all his ways. And when you go into that avouched, reading it, it's basically here you've declared or proclaimed, as it says in the NKJV, right? Today you have proclaimed the Lord to be your God, and that you will walk in his ways and keep his statutes, his commandments, his judgments, and that you will obey his voice. Okay? So reading that in the reading verse 17 again, thou hast avouched the Lord Yahweh this day to be thy God, and to walk in his ways, and to keep his statutes, and his commandments, and his judgments, and to hearken unto his voice. And the Lord Yahweh hath avouched thee this day to be his peculiar people, as he hath promised thee, and thou shalt keep all his commandments. So you have, openly proclaimed, right, and accepted the Lord to be your God. He has accepted you to be his people, and to make thee high above all nations which he hath made, in praise, and in name, and in honor, and that thou mayest be an holy people unto the Lord Yahweh thy God, as he hath spoken. And that brings us to the end of the book of Deuteronomy, the 26th chapter. Lord willing, thou is edifying to the elect. In closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahushai, Bahasham, Rakha Kodash. Until next time, Shalom.